Hi, Chef Bob from Cannon Beach Cooking School. Once again, coming to you with the recipe of the day. Today we're doing a simple risotto, and although a lot of people think risotto isn't simple, it really is once you kind of master the technique. And with all of the things we do, it's about technique, not necessarily the recipe. Keeping in mind, the recipe always lives online at www.evoo.biz. All right, simple risotto. It starts with ingredients that truly are simple. We've got some vegetables here. I've got fennel, celery, carrots, onion, and garlic. This mixture is going to create what we call a sofrito, and sofrito is that foundation of aromatics that really give flavor to your finished product. So we also have, to make our risotto today, we've got some extra virgin olive oil, which we're going to saute our sofrito in. Of course, our arborio rice. I prefer the rice that comes from northern Italy, but there is the local product always available. I'm a purist when it comes to that, however. We also have some seasoning blends, some saffron, some Parmesan cheese to finish the dish when we're done, and of course the stock that we're going to use to create it. This is a neutral stock using one of my spice rubs, my flavors of Sicily specifically, with water and salt. So this whole thing, up until the cheese, is going to be a vegan dish. We'll turn it into a vegetarian dish by adding the cheese, but at the end of the day, you can add chicken, pork, whatever you want to make this your favorite risotto. All right, we're going to add enough extra virgin olive oil to coat the bottom of the pan, because we have a lot of vegetables to cook today. I'm just going to move that oil around, coating it evenly. Looks good. Nice little layer there. I'm going to start by adding my garlic. And the garlic has been sliced. I prefer to slice it as opposed to paste it because I want to draw out some aromatics without making it too strong. Garlic paste is a little too pungent because every time you cut garlic a little bit more, it increases the intensity. All right, nice little handful of onion going in, a little handful of carrot. You know the garlic's already in there. Some celery, and some fennel. All right, I'm going to add just a handful more of onion. Looking good. And when the vegetables go in, it's time to add salt. Salt helps to draw out moisture, and that moisture is what's going to make the vegetables taste so much better. Good technique whenever you're cooking vegetables. All right, in addition, we're going to add some ground pepper. Nice. And because it's me, a little bit of ground coriander. And by a little bit, I mean a lot of ground coriander. So we're going to cook this for about 15 minutes, really developing the fact that this is a sofrito. These vegetables will melt down into the risotto because the risotto, the rice itself, if you will, is the star here. All right, and looks good. All right, we're 15 minutes in. This looks fantastic. So they're melting slightly. They're definitely translucent, so we're where we want to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little sample out. I like to show at the very end. Again, I'll do a recap on these different stages. And so at this point, we need to add the arborio rice. And so I've got just over 2.5 cups of rice. I measured it and put it in this container, so don't use this as a measurement device. You want to dry measure here. So 2.5 cups of arborio. And we're going to stir this. Before we add the wine, which is the acid, we'll talk about that in a minute, we need to kind of cook this to polish the grain. Polishing the grain refers to the fact that we're going to toast this rice, and as we toast it, you're going to see these white little halos around the center. And that's what I call them. I call them a halo around the rice, and that means we've polished it sufficiently. So we're going to stir this for about 3 minutes to get that polish happening, at which point we'll add our acid. We'll talk about that again here in just a second. All right, so 3 minutes in, I'm going to go ahead and pull some of this up to the camera because I want you to see. There are little halos, hopefully you can get that on there, Melissa, little halos around the grain. Can you see that? Looks beautiful. It's actually just translucent. You can see the center. That tells me that we're where we need to be. So let's take yet one more sample out. Put that right over here next to our sofrito. Great. I'm going to add some spice. This is my flavors of Sicily. You can add any spice you want. You can just keep it salt and pepper if you really like. Also going to add a little bit more salt, speaking of which, and saffron. I have an ounce of saffron here, just opening it up. I always love opening this in front of people because it's wrapped like a little gift. And for what I pay an ounce, it is definitely should be gift wrapped. And we're going to come in with just a couple nice pinches. This is all before the wine goes in. I want to call that one big pinch. That'll be actually perfect. I'm going to go ahead and work that in. And so all of our spices are in. Now we've got dry spices, not fresh. Fresh herbs and spices, or fresh herbs rather, going at the very end. We'll talk about that later. We're going to add our white wine. It's at room temperature, not cold. It has to be room temperature. Talk about all that here in a moment. You want to add enough wine or acid to cover the rice. And we've done that. So here's what's happening. I'm on medium heat. I've been on medium heat the whole time. Acid is needed to help the rice do its job. If you just add liquid without an acid, like our stock, to the arborio, it's going to burst like rice does when you cook it, a 2-to-1 ratio. But when you're making arborio, the rice is seized by the acid, which means that when it finally has the liquid added, it's going to slowly absorb. So you need to have an acid, otherwise it's just going to blow up and be mushy. Now, it doesn't have to be wine. It can be juice. It can be verjus, which is unfermented wine, if you will. It could be vinegar. It could be lemon juice. It could be whatever you want it to be. If it's lemon juice, it should be lemon juice and water, because you don't want it to be too strong. But you got to have that acid there. So we're going to bring this to a simmer, and this is going to cook just until the wine reduces out. At that point, the rice is going to be flavored, and that hydration that I'm talking about with the acid will have done its job. Okay, so our wine has reduced out, and I'm going to grab yet one more sample. We can talk about that later. And while it's nice and dry, because the rice has been absorbed, has absorbed the wine rather, we're going to start with our stock. I'm going to go with a couple ladles to start it out. These couple ladles are to saturate the rice, and any rice that might be sticking on the bottom of your pan, if you've done this right, should release at this point. Yes, perfect. Okay, so quick side note. I promised that I would talk about why room temperature wine. And this is all about getting this to work very, very quickly as you cook. If you add a cold wine, you're seizing up the rice, and now it's got to heat up as it's also evaporating out. And that time frame kind of throws off the accuracy of how that rice is going to absorb liquid. So it should be room temperature, not cold. As we have the liquid, we're going to be doing this in several stages. Contrary to popular belief, you don't have to stir risotto the whole time it cooks. We're about 25 minutes out to a finished risotto once you add your first stock. And so we're going to be adding stock over the next few minutes. Every time it gets absorbed almost all the way, we add some more stock in small amounts. And we're going to do this up until the 20-minute mark. So even though it takes 25 minutes to cook, we're going to go 20 minutes and then reconvene and talk about where we are and what we need to do next. So we're 20 minutes in. The rice itself, I just tasted it. I'm going to taste it again, because what you want is, this is going to be really al dente. And it feels like maybe another 3 or 4 minutes to finish the cooking. You can note that it's almost dry. At this point, you've got a couple options. You can add more liquid, continue to stir it, complete it, and ready to serve. Or, because every time I ever entertain with risotto, it never fails, someone's not at the dining room table when they should be. So I like to give myself a little bit of window. And that's where this technique comes in. So with 3 to 5 minutes left or remaining, I'm going to go ahead and add what would be the normal stock to finish the rice. I'm going to add 2 ladles. We're going to stir it in. And while we're stirring, lid in hand, we're going to go ahead and cover it, take it off the heat, and let it sit for up to 10 to 15 minutes. When I open the lid, it'll be perfectly cooked, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my accoutrement. So we are good to go. All right, so we are 10 minutes in. I always know we're ready when you stand a spatula up there, and it looks pretty good. There we go, nice and firm. Still a little bit of liquid in there. There we go. Stand it up, perfect. Let's make sure that happened. Okay, so I'm going to take a small sample out. You can kind of see our progression. At this point, whatever you add at this point is optional. You can leave it alone, it's going to be great. But it's lean, there's not a lot of fat in here. So we're going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Stir that in. I'm also going to add some chopped Italian flattened parsley. Also going to stir that in. And we have a finished risotto. And although I called it simple, and the process technique is simple, when people eat this, it's far from simple as far as what they're going to say to you when they put that in their mouth. So let's just take a quick look at this. Oh yeah, that's delicious. Okay, the risotto's finished. Let's go back and recap what we've done to get to this point. Up here we've got our little sofrito that was cooked for about 15 to 20 minutes to develop those flavors and literally melt those vegetables in. Then we added our rice and we polished it until we had that halo effect. Then we added our wine and aromatics, in this case the spices, cooked them down. You can see it's still very dry, but that was because the wine reduced out. Then just before we reduced that wine out, we got here. This is where the stock was added and we had our first hydration. and finally our finished product. So our wheel of risotto, if you will. It's a simple method. It's always a lot of fun. Go to our website for this and other great recipes, www.evoo.biz, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.